Welcome to Local Relief Live, the podcast where we empower communities to prepare for, survive, and recover from disasters. I am Heather Hackett, the founder and executive director of Local Relief, and I'm thrilled to have you here. Every episode, we are going to bring you real stories of resilience. We are going to bring you expert advice from disaster professionals, and we are also going to give you tips to keep you informed and connected during life's most challenging events. So grab a cup of coffee, sit tight, and welcome to Local Relief Live. So I just want to say thank you for joining the first episode of Local Relief Live.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So this is Local Relief Live. We are going to tell you all about it and what it does and what it's created for. But in all honesty, it's created for people just like this. So this is Stephanie Carroll. Stephanie Carroll is, I will say it again, she's a professional badass. And she has Carroll Consulting Group. And really, part of why I wanted her on here was because she has that professional mindset and she is a very smart woman. But also the way I was introduced to her was the Climate Adaptation Conference. Stephanie was there and she was talking about the fact that she had lost her home during Helene. And I want to say it was Helene, right?
Yeah, the first time. And then we had some damage from Milton as well. 2 weeks later, yeah.
Yeah, Sarasota and Manatee were the lucky recipients of being hit by Debbie, Helene, and Milton. So that's why around here you have to kind of clarify which disaster it was, because we didn't just have one this year and it was kind of crazy. But I was introduced there and we started having conversations, and I can't even say the persistence and just the background and the effort that Stephanie has put in towards finding resources, finding information. And she's not doing this for me, she's doing this for her. So this is the real story and true impact of someone going through disaster and how difficult it is to recover and how long it takes and how much effort it takes. And I can tell the story, but it's nowhere near as compelling as you telling your own. So Stephanie, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't you start by telling us your story?
So I actually looked at the calendar and it was 120 days ago yesterday that Helene storm surge pushed about 2 to 3 feet of water through our home on Siesta Key, destroying pretty much everything in its path. Since then, it's been nothing I could have ever anticipated or imagined. It's been the toughest challenge I've ever faced in my life, and I've faced some pretty tough ones in the past, but nothing compared to this. It's just, a lot of it's inconceivable, actually. Like, you come back to your home and you cannot imagine what the force and pressure of that kind of storm surge can do to your house.
I think even there, I want to stop and say, okay, storm surge. Some people know what storm surge is. Mm-hmm. More than likely, the only people that know what storm surge is are people that have experienced it. But it took me a long time learning because I came from Ohio. We don't have storm surge in Ohio. I just think it's 2 feet up of what the normal coastline is. It's not the case at all. Why don't you explain what storm surge is and how it did that to your house?
So you may know more of the scientific explanation.
No clue.
What after studying after it happened to us, because I didn't necessarily, we always heard storm surge. But I'm from Florida, so yeah. I'm used to hurricanes. I'm used to evacuations. We have extremely healthy respect for hurricanes, but still, this didn't prepare us. Basically, I visualize it like where the ocean just kind of like pulls itself together and the wind starts pulling, and it just takes these like unimaginable like tidal waves of water and this force, and it just envelopes everything in its path. And we actually had some friends, some neighbors that stayed, which please, if you learned anything, please evacuate. We always evacuated. We had people floating on mattresses in their homes. We had a neighbor in their kayaks inside their home with life jackets on. And they were, as they should be, frightened to death because the water was just, and the quickness of it, like really like a friend of mine down the street who's on like a 2-story. He said he looked out and he could see the water down the street. And then he looked away, he looked back, and it was like right at his house. Like, it's so fast. When it comes, you can't protect yourself from it. It's too quick. So that's what a storm surge is. And it just kind of, I think of like a tidal wave or somewhat like a tsunami,
Yeah, I think most people think of it as it's just rising up little by little, and it's not that at all. It comes from like side to side with a vengeance, where it is not just, oh, we have standing water in our house. We have water shaking our house. We have water consuming our house.
When I walked in, like there was furniture that was supposed to be in one room that was in another room. And I'm like, how does it get? Like, you would find one shoe over here and one shoe outside. It's like, what the? I had put something, what was it, after Helene out by the trash pile. And after Milton, when we came back, it was 4 neighbors down in their yard. Like, you can't imagine it. You can't drive in it. You can't walk in it. You can't do anything in it.
So how long did it take from the storm for you to be able to get back to your house? Speaking of which.
It wasn't long. It was probably 2 to 3 days. And we had a friend who had a big truck because a lot of people still couldn't, it wasn't passable. So he had a big truck and he went around to our house and some other people's houses and took some video because you're always like, well, what happened? How bad is it? Maybe we were saved. Maybe we didn't. You know, you always hope that it's not going to be as bad as it is.
Well, even there, what's going through your mind through those 2 to 3 days? Oh, that's a long time.
Yeah, what are we going to do? Do we have anything left? What's going to happen after? Where are we going to live? I mean, those are some of the same things that still happen once you find out, you know, the shape of your home. But yeah, it's just that uncertainty. And for my husband and I, like, our home is like our grounding place. And for a lot of people, that's kind of like your safe space where you go, where you know, you just kind of let go. And so to have that like taken out from under you, it shakes everything. You know, some people say, like, I feel like I'm falling apart. Well, you are falling apart in a way because life as you knew it is no longer existent. And even though you have an opportunity to evolve into sort of a new, better self, it's still like the first thing you want to do is grab to things you know because it feels secure, but there is nothing there that you know. So you're just kind of in this like, holy shit. What just happened?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, even there, and I can't imagine the 2 to 3 days. Like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around 2 to 3 days, not finding that information. How did you find information? What were your methods of communication? What pages were you going to? What sites were you going to? Who were you going to? What sources did you find useful and beneficial of people that were sharing information?
So unfortunately, the government sites or the agency sites didn't have any information. They just didn't have it yet. Even the county, to an extent, couldn't tell us what happened to our house, right? They could talk up in general about, you know, the flooding and things like that. And we knew we couldn't, for a while, they wouldn't even let you come on to the bridges. So you couldn't get on. But we really kind of relied on neighbors at that point. Anybody who did stay, who hopefully won't stay in the future, they're pretty sure, they've said that was not a good thing to do and they won't ever do it again. They would, you know, maybe somebody like our friend with the truck, he was driving around and he took video for us. So that's really how we were getting information. So it wasn't a ton of it. And, you know, what we got back was video with water in our house. And we're like, you know, like, how bad is it really? I mean, maybe we can mop that up.
Right.
You know, you just don't know because you just haven't been through it before. You know, it's like one of our neighbors across the street. She was like, oh, well, it's like fresh water. I can wash out all my rugs. No, actually, the insurance adjuster told me, you know, when I called them, like, can I go in and start doing anything? And of course, they're like, take pictures of everything, which I cannot stress enough. Please. I've always gotten in the habit of before a hurricane taking pictures, but I can't tell you how many times those pictures were necessary for insurance, for FEMA, for everybody. And if I could give you some advice, this part I did not do because I went around and took videos. You open up drawers, open up closets, what's inside this kitchen cabinet, you know, because you forget, like, what are these small appliances that I had in here? How many jackets did I have? How many pairs of shoes? But take pictures of your home when it looks beautiful and almost think of it like, I'm going to sell my home, and go around and take pictures like that. And then go and take the smaller stuff, like the detail stuff. Because what's happened is our home didn't look like it did before, right? So there's no way for us to say, unless we had those kind of like model home pictures, to say like, this is what it was. So that's why you want to make sure, do it now, even before there's a storm, because at least you'll have something. But even better, do it before each time you evacuate, because then you have the most up-to-date information. That's the first thing that everybody's asked us for. Do you have pictures of your home before the flood?
I didn't think about that part either, is that you take them. And, you know, in addition to pictures too, I always tell people take a video because it's going to catch stuff that you didn't think of. And it's everything from, you know, that refrigerator was given to us from whatever, doesn't have value. Yes, it does, because if you have to replace it, you're going to have to pay for it.
Right.
So it's everything. It's things you don't think of. Take a video and walking, and you'll get that thing in the corner that you forgot, or whatever the case is. Because just like you said, I wouldn't even think of the opening drawers and the pots and pans and the dishes, all of that stuff. Because when it's gone, it's gone.
I mean, it's contaminated. Well, so what I was going to say is the insurance adjuster said you need to treat your home like a hazardous waste site, because the reality is there's waste from the sewer that went through your home, you know? So I would tell everybody that came to help. I mean, that was one of I look for like the bright lights, or, you know, bright moments.
Yeah.
Is the way the community came together to help each other, and friends that came to help us, and friends of friends that came to help us, and just kindness that everybody was contributing to help each other out.
It
like we
really does
did.
showcase the best of humanity.
Yeah, it
I
really does.
believe that 100%.
Yes.
It-
I think that Sarasota was in a common grieving. Like everybody was, there's a word for it. I can't think of the word right this second. Collective grieving. So everybody in Sarasota was collectively grieving, even if their house wasn't damaged. Like people would come to my house to help. And by the time they got to my house, they were in tears, not because of my house, but because of everything they passed along the way.
Yeah.
It looked like a war zone.
It's still your home. That's what people don't realize. It may not be my house, but Siesta Key, Sarasota, the day before Milton, that was when Sarasota was supposed to get, the day before that, I went downtown. I cried like a baby.
Yeah.
Because that's not physically my structure or home, but that's my home.
Right,
You know, and
right.
it's heavy.
Yeah.
It's very, very heavy, and you feel like it's never going to hit, or we know it could happen, but, you know, whether you believe in the ancient, you know, Indian burial grounds or whatever it is, you feel vulnerable, you feel violated, you feel like all of those emotions, and then to see it. And not only that, to have it in your home and to have the emotions that, you know, and I wouldn't think of either, where you just said treat your house as a hazmat area. I mean, what stuff were you throwing away? I can't even imagine at that point. That's like everything.
Yeah. The streets look like a war zone. You probably went out there, but the smell of all the stuff piled up by the street was, I mean, you could smell it when you drive on the key. It was just like, yeah, it's bad. So we worked with gloves. You know, some people had masks on if they had any immune issues or whatever. So you had
Yeah.
to be careful. You just couldn't,
What advice would you give someone cleaning out their home?
just what the insurance adjuster told me, treat it like a hazmat situation. Initially, you're probably going to want to keep stuff, which I did. I was like, yeah, I want to keep this and this. And, you know, a day or two later, you go back and you see it's either rusted or the corrode, or you just see and you're like, okay. It's a little hard at first because, you know, it's my favorite sofa that I took 9 months to
Yeah,
pick out, you know, and it's like now it's out by the street in a trash pile, you know, you're like, it's a little bit like you have to go through that process of letting go. And, you know, I was thinking about the folks in LA and the fires, and I'm like, at least we could go back in our home and we could pretend like we were going to keep some stuff, you know? And we're like, oh, we could probably clean this up. And then you
Yeah.
look at it and you're like, yeah, we're not going to clean that up. But at least we could pretend we were going to. So it helped with that grieving process
Yeah.
of letting go. But like in the fire, there's
Well, you
no-
have the physical structure, you know, where I think that's the key too, is you can remove drywall, you can take it to stud. There's a lot that you can do
Yeah,
if you have the structure,
right.
you know, but California, they don't even have the
Nothing.
structure. That's ash. There's nothing to collect.
I mean, yeah, the grieving.
Yeah. And they can't even get back to that area yet to grieve it and see it and not see it at the same
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
that's a whole other topic and day and and story. But even to stay with this, like you said, the insurance information. So that alone is a whole big topic, but just in general, from the insurance that you have, from what you knew of insurance, from what you knew then to what you knew now, what would your advice be for homeowners and insurance?
At least myself and other people that I've talked to that were impacted, like, we don't know what insurance. We never sat down and studied our insurance.
Maybe
to
not
see-
advice, but let's
Yeah.
talk about your experience with it. Let's talk
Yeah.
about how that worked for you or how it
Yeah.
didn't work.
So much time involved. I mean, even like for contents, and this is where the video comes in. You have to sit down, you have to write out what every item is, the brand name, where you bought it, how much it was when we bought it, how much it is to replace it. I mean, hours. And it's not just insurance, it's FEMA, it's SBA, whatever resources you're trying to gather. It takes so much time. It was like, honestly, a part-time job. And the information is confusing because there's a lot of like governmental agencies like FDEM. What the heck does FDEM stand for? Florida Department of Emergency Management, I now know. But
Yeah.
what do they do? How is that different than FEMA? Or is it the same? There's Hope Florida. Well, that's awesome. But how are they different than, you know, and do I need to apply here and also here? Why am I getting denied on this and not on this? And you've got these well-meaning people, and I believe that everybody who works in these organizations really wants to help people. And a lot of time they just don't have the information. Well, particularly in Florida, because this had never happened before. So people were in these organizations were at a loss as well. But you may get 3 different answers from 3 different people in the same organization. So my thing is like, if you get an answer, they're like, that doesn't sound right. Keep digging.
Yeah.
Keep digging. again, they want to help. So sometimes you'll get a lot of new people because whenever these disasters happen, they have to hurry up and hire a bunch of people. So you'll get a lot of new people, again, who really want to help, but don't have the information.
Some of the kindest people I've come across are the people at FEMA, to say, even the ones that I've met here. I know the one guy, Peter, but when they're face to face every day with people that are upset, people that are, hurt, people that are, and especially during Helene, which Helene was huge, not just Florida, but I mean, it took out like the whole Southwest United States, between North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee. I mean, there was so much, and they were really spread thin.
Absolutely.
So especially just keep in mind, they may be well-intentioned or they may be whatever, but just as you said, you may get a couple answers, and you have to be, overall to say, and we've talked about this too with your persistence and just the fact that you just keep going back. I think
they're not going to get rid of me. They're like, oh my God, here she is.
But it's that where, the biggest advice we kind of talked even before this of like your biggest advice just as a whole is
keep going, keep digging, try different avenues. Like really what's been the most helpful is if there's a town hall in your meeting where these organizations come together, go to it, because you're going to get the leadership at the top and they're going to know what's up, right?
Yeah.
And then a lot of people are trying to fill out stuff online or whatever, which is fine. But if you go to the community centers where they have FEMA and SBA set up, they have people there who have travel around from disaster to disaster. So they're more likely to have the right information. And instead of waiting, like the other day, I was on hold with, I can't remember now, for an hour and 45 minutes. I can go to a community center and maybe wait 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and be right in front of someone who can check on the status of something for me or tell me what I need to do next. So doing that, definitely try to go in person. I sound like an old person by saying that, but it actually is true.
No, it does. And even that was where, before I met you, I saw you was at the town hall in Sarasota. And I don't know if every other state has it. I know FDM, again, Florida Division of Emergency Management, they put it on, and Kevin Guthrie was there, and the executive director, he was there, and that was fantastic.
Yes.
And it really is. They went, county to county, and they had these town halls, which at the town hall, it was SBA, it was FEMA, it was FDM, it was, all the organizations that you really need information from. And it was question and answer. You could raise your hand and ask a question and get an answer right then, or be led to the right person that you need to speak with. But even what you were speaking of, the disaster recovery centers, they're called the DRCs, and that's where you'll find FEMA, and then they have multi-agency resource centers, which is where you can go. Again, it's a collective hub. Imagine like a mall, of all the resources that you need, they put them all together, and it is so valuable because you can go to one hub and you can find information and resources that you didn't know existed, local organizations, nationwide organizations, but really go there and get some information. So I'm really glad you utilize those because not many people find out about them.
Yeah, right. And even like the town hall, I only found out about it by accident, and I'm like a research hog. So the fact that I only found out about it by accident and I'm looking for that kind of stuff, I was like, that's, I think, where local relief can be helpful, is like having, with the way you have the information all in one place, because I'm all over the place trying to. And then I think the other thing I would say is, I forget what it's called, where you said with the whole, everybody, all the agencies are there. What is that one called?
Oh, the Disaster Recovery Center or the multi-agency?
Yeah,
they call it the DRC and the MARC. So that one's the
so
mark.
When you go to the multi-agency, it can be somewhat overwhelming, especially because we were like still in shock for like 30 days, and you get a handful of information. So at least what I've learned from trying different things and asking other people what they've done is like start with the biggest one first, where you need that. Like we needed housing immediately. So start with that first, and then go to the next one where you think you're going to get the most cash help. Focus on that first. And if you have a friend who wasn't impacted by the disaster and is like a detail person and wants to help, get them on board. Because you got to track, notes and track all the information. And where is the process? Where are you in the process with this organization? Where are you process with that organization? What else do they need? Just keeping track of all that stuff. If you have a friend who is willing to help and they like keeping, Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah,
definitely.
We should create one.
Yeah.
I want to create one. Yeah. Like a little, not a storm tracker per se, like a storm tracker, but a progress tracker.
Yeah.
Because it's overwhelming and it's huge. And part of why I love having you on here is because you are that business consultant and, as I say, the business badass. With your experience, with your knowledge, you're a smart cookie and you still struggle finding it and you still have to be diligent and you have to, it is not easy. It really isn't. And just the fact that even with everything you found, even as diligent as you are, and the fact that you do have a flexible schedule where you can do some of this stuff where some people don't, and they're doing the 9 to 5 or they're doing the 8 to 5 and they're trying to work. I cannot even imagine what that would be like, trying to do all of it when
so hard.
All of the agencies, that's when they're open. And my heart goes out to you on that one. I really can't.
Yeah, it's really tough. I really get concerned. There's a lot of elderly people that live on Siesta Key in particular, and I'm sure on Longboat, whatever, and just not having as much cognitive space to be able to manage all that information and not having maybe the technical savvy to get online and do all that stuff. I really worry about them.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. But one thing that I would like to ask, you mentioned 120 days.
Mm-hmm.
So 120 days, where are you now?
Every day gets better and better. We're starting to feel lighter. We're still in an Airbnb. Our home is still not livable. We're still in the process of what do we do? It's likely that we're not going to be able to repair. If we stay there, we'd have to tear down and build up. What government agency funds are available to help us? What grants are available? There's still a lot of unknown, but the initial holy shit, what just happened? And how did my life get turned upside down?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that really helped me was I was talking to Bob Bunting from the Climate Adaptation Center. And for people who don't know what the Climate Adaptation Center is, they take the national weather information, they make it relevant for Florida. And Bob Bunting, who is the founder of the organization, lives here in Sarasota. And he was generous enough to meet with us to give us some insights into what should we do. Because I found that we needed people a lot smarter than us to help us answer the questions like, do we tear down? Do we build? Do we leave the key? What do we do? Where do we go? I had remembered a couple of weeks prior to meeting with Bob, standing in my front yard with all of my belongings, our belongings, out by the street thinking, what just happened? How did my life get out by the street? What is going on? And Bob Bunting has a really great way of looking at things. He says, look for the opportunities within the challenge. So what are your opportunities within the challenge? And then I started thinking, oh, that's not my life out by the street. That's just a part of my life story. And now I have the opportunity to create a new life story. So what do I need to be able to do that? What information do I need? What resources do I need? So that kind of shift in attitude has really helped us not just be, frankly, depressed and curled up in the bed, because the life we thought we had or were going to have into our retirement, we loved our home, we were going to stay there, forever, is no longer. So yes, you have to give yourself time to grieve because there's a big loss there. But a loss of a lot of things, a loss of your security, a loss of what you thought was going to happen, and a loss of your stuff. But if you can focus on your health, you're safe, your family's safe, other people are safe, and that was just stuff. We can all get more stuff, Yeah. And maybe I don't need as much stuff as I had before. And look for the opportunities within the challenge, then that can help lift your spirits every day a little bit more, every day a little bit more, every day a little bit more. And as the key starts to clean up more and starts looking less like a war zone and more like maybe kind of what it used to be, though it's not going to be there for probably even another 9 months or so, But that can really pull you down too, just looking at it all,
Oh, it's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very heavy. No, but I think that's incredible. And kudos to Bob. Bob's fantastic, by the way. You should definitely look for the CAC. But as far as that perspective shift, because it is big and it is heavy and you're standing out there. And for anybody that's ever seen it, that was part of the reason why I created Local Relief, was because you drive down and you see the piles, and the piles are stories high. And it's not just piles of trash. It's piles of cabinets. It's piles of appliances. It's piles of cars. It's piles of boats. It's piles of things that you never think could be in piles, but it's piles. But the worst, once you get past that abundance of stuff, is the expression that you see on people's face that's looking at all this stuff. And they're looking at their whole life on the street. And then they turn around and have to go into this house that's like a shell. There's no drywall in the house. I mean, to say there's nothing in the house, there is nothing in the house. There's no power in the house. There's no electricity in the house. There is the shell of what you once called home. And it is everything you can possibly think of is in the street. And it's that now what expression. It is the blank expression of completely overwhelmed, completely my whole world just shifted. And it's that Now what? And that look, you can't get out of your head. And it's not just you, it's neighbors, it's everybody. It's this like apocalypse that has happened, and it's wiped the expressions off. And if you can, come in there and give people a shred of hope, in some phrase, sentence, something that helped you or whatever the case is. I mean, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's everything at that point.
And these all sound like silly, but they do work. Practice gratitude every day. Look for the kindness. Look for it and the kindness. Like there were restaurants that weren't on the key that would come on the key and set up and provide free food for disaster victims and for people working there. I mean, they didn't have to do that. There were neighbors that didn't have as much damage that were walking around passing out bottles of water to other neighbors. You have to look for those lights in the dark,
There were a lot of lights, I have to admit. There were a lot of lights, and it's different. Everything's just different after that. I don't know how to explain it. You just kind of appreciate everyone, I think, a little bit more. But the one thing that I do want to touch on and have you back for is the information that you still want to find, the mitigation, even something, to tear down or not to tear down, and what you're finding out and what information that you have found and still need to find, and even, talking to people and bringing people on here that can give answers, I think would be great.
Yes.
So that's really the whole goal of local relief. The whole point of local relief is just this. It's to help you. And it's to put all of those resources together so you don't have to keep digging. And then in addition to the resources, we provide information saying, hey, here's how you use those resources. Here's how you get these resources. So that's really the goal. And the whole goal of the podcast is to inform you and bring those resources in here and give you information in a real way. It's two people talking. It's giving advice to a friend as opposed to, like we mentioned before, with like a formal broadcast. This is just a straight conversation, and don't give it to me in these terms, and don't talk with an asterisk and I need to put this. No, just tell me. And I think that's what people need is more of the information of just tell me, just be straight and help me so I can help myself, but also so we can help other people. The goal there is really to give that information and provide, one source for that and have it be legit. So yeah, so if you haven't downloaded the Local Relief app, please do. It's free on the App Store and Google Play. We will tell you more about the app in a second, but I wanted to say sincerely, thank you very much for being on here, for coffee, for conversations about this. And I know Stephanie has been valuable and will continue to be valuable in this quest. So
happy to help.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. After a disaster, it's easy to feel lost, you feel frustrated, and you feel overwhelmed. That's why Local Relief was created. It was created just for you. It's created for you to have that hub, to have the resources, the connections, and the information that's going to help you prepare for, survive, and recover faster. Please subscribe to our podcast, follow us on social media, and above all, download the Local Relief app to become part of our stronger, more connected community. Because together, we can recover faster and build back stronger.